Some patterns are easy to miss until you start to connect the dots. Hello and welcome back to Rooted in the Seasons, where ancient wisdom meets modern life with a strong cup of tea and practical tools for real busy women. I'm Katya Patel, Ayurvedic diet and lifestyle educator, yoga teacher, and teacher mentor. Today, I would like to talk about something that might feel very familiar to you. That feeling of being rushed, a bit reactive, not quite settled, but without obvious reasons. And what I find really interesting is that the yoga philosophy actually speaks directly to this, just in a slightly different language. It's easy to think of the yoga philosophy as something abstract, something we learn about but don't really live. But the Yama and Niyama, which are often described as guidelines for spiritual growth, don't only belong to philosophy or deeper study. They show up throughout the day, mostly in very ordinary moments. And you don't need to know anything about yoga philosophy for this to be relevant. There is actually a reason for this. The Yama and Niyama are closely linked to what the Yoga Sutras describe as the kleshas, the obstacles, the underlying patterns that disturb the mind. Things like misunderstandings, gravitating towards what we like, avoiding what we dislike, or fear. So if you think about it, these are not abstract ideas at all. These are things we all experience every single day. And this is how the mind tends to move. What I find so helpful is that the yoga philosophy doesn't just point this out. It also offers a way to work with it. And it might not be the way you think, maybe by controlling everything, but by creating a little bit more steadiness. In many ways, this is really what we talk about as today as stress. Not only what comes from the outside, but the inner pressure that builds through these patterns, the reacting, the comparing, the constant sense of needing something more. So, what does this actually look like in a normal day? Because this is where it becomes interesting and so familiar. If you look closely, many of these principles are already part of your day. For example, in the morning, you get up, brush your teeth, have a shower, maybe tidy up a little. Not because of a rule, it's what you do to keep your space feel clearer. And the mind follows, right? When things around us feel less cluttered, it becomes easier to settle. And this is Saucha, cleanliness in action. And you don't even need to think about it. It comes naturally. Another example is Tapas, steady effort. You choose one small anchor, maybe a regular mealtime, a short walk, or a breathing practice. And instead of doing everything, you stay with one thing only, but consistently. And you've ever done this, you know it changes something. You start approaching your days differently. That is quiet discipline already there. And there's another layer to this. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. Maybe you've heard this, or maybe you've even noticed this. Throughout the day, it's very easy for that energy to get pulled into different directions. Scrolling, reacting, jumping from one thing to the next. This is simply how our lives are now. There's always something asking you for your attention. But by the end of the day, it can feel like there is not much left. Brahmacharya points to something very simple. A subtle awareness of where your energy is going and whether it's supporting what actually matters to you. By noticing where your attention rests and by bringing it back where you can. And then in your interactions with others, we've all been there in the rush of the day. It's easy to react quickly. Someone bumps into you on the way to the tube station, or the car behind you beeps because you hesitate a moment. Someone is short, someone is late, and you feel the pressure yourself. But sometimes there is a moment of pause, a moment to recognize that everyone is carrying something, that they are not reacting to you. They are simply caught up in their own day, just as you are. And in that moment, something shifts. You soften, even slightly. Maybe you smile at someone, hold the door open, let someone pass. That's Ahimsa in practice. Then it doesn't only soften you and your behavior, but also the one you just smiled at. And then there's something else that often shows up, that quiet pull to reach for more food, more input, more reassurance. And you don't even know why. Just a quiet feeling of not enough underneath. If you notice that, often just acknowledging it without acting on it creates a little space. And in that space, again, it can begin to ease just as it arose. And that same feeling can show up in other areas of life too. For example, when we create or share something, it's easy to take inspiration without fully acknowledging where it came from. Not necessarily out of intention, but because there is a pressure to keep up. Coming back to what is truly ours and respecting what belongs to someone else is part of this practice too. And then there is my favorite, a quiet thread that runs through all of this, a sense of enough. Moments when nothing has changed on the outside, but there is a small shift on the inside, a pause, a recognition that for now, this is okay. That things don't need to be different in this exact moment. This is where the mind settles. And when we can return to it again and again, this is contentment, Santosha. And alongside of all of this, there's another layer, an overarching layer, so to speak. There are things we can influence and things we can't. And when everything sits on our shoulders, it can feel heavy very quickly, especially when we are already feeling under pressure. Ishvara Pranidhana points to something very simple, that not everything has to be managed alone, that there are larger forces at play, however you want to understand that. And that sometimes there is value in trusting that things can unfold without constant effort. For me, the Yama and Niyama are not rigid rules. They are part of a wider system designed to help the mind remain steady. We can't remove life's challenges, but we can soften the patterns that make them harder. And often this doesn't begin with a philosophy. It begins with something much simpler. How your day is structured, how supported your body feels, and whether there's enough rhythm for the mind to rest in. From here, many of these things begin to fall into place almost naturally. So maybe today, just notice one moment, one small pattern, and see what happens if you pause there, even for a breath. You might be thinking, this all sounds great, but I struggle to stay consistent. And you're not alone there. This is exactly why I created my live workshop, When Rest Isn't Enough, Rebuild Your Daily Rhythm. It's not about adding more techniques, but about how your day is structured and how small, consistent shifts help your system settle again. And this is what it's all about. You don't need to change everything. One small step is enough. Thank you so much for listening to Rooted in the Seasons. If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe or follow Rooted in the Seasons on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That way, new episodes land automatically for you. If you'd like more support between episodes, you can download my free guide, my 5 quick Ayurvedic fixes from scattered to steady, and join my Sunday Read newsletter. You'll find all the relevant links in the show notes. If something in today's episode resonated, I genuinely love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Substack or drop me an email, even better. I always read and answer them. Until next time, stay rooted in the seasons. Bye-bye.